Okay, good morning. List. We are started last time talking about 7 disagreements, machlokes, and they have to do with Shemittah. Well, that I thought were important, 7 important ones. We didn't finish all 7. Last time we did 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. And today, we're going to do number 5 and number 6. If I counted it differently, we could probably say there are 7 going to be today also. But anyhow, we'll start like this. Okay. The first is, we're going to talk about the 3 kulos of the Chazon Ish. And that is like this. During Shemittah, farmers can't work the fields. And anything that grows in the field is hadchak also. So that's obviously a huge financial issue for a farmer, or appears to be a financial issue to farmers. So one of the ways that in modern times, in the past 50 years, they've been trying to help that, 75 years, to help the farmers a little bit with the financial side is something called Otzar Beis Din, which I mentioned last time. I'll say it again briefly, and that is, all the pairs are hadchak. Everything that grows is hadchak. But the Pesachta says is, people could do is the community can appoint people, community meaning the Beis Din. The community appoints people to go out to the fields, find all that fruit that's out there that's hadchak, and bring it into town, bring it to where people can get to it, to make it accessible to people. So the Beis Din is doing things that a regular person couldn't do. A regular person couldn't harvest all that stuff together in professional ways and this and that. But as a community, they're allowed to do that, and it's for the public. Okay, so when they do that, the produce is hadchak, and that's kedusha shvias. But a lot of that work that happens is they're allowed to get paid for. Which is to say, the produce is hadchak, but if you want me to truck it in from the farm to the city, I can pay for that. You want me to put it into a bag? You want me to do all kinds of, or even to pull off the field, pull off the tree? The community could pay someone to do that. All that work someone could pay for, so they can pay someone. And guess what? The person who's most qualified to do that is the farmer, because he deals with this field all the time. He knows exactly how to deal with it, and he has the equipment, so they pay him. So essentially what happens is that if the apples would have cost $1 a pound, let's say they could pay the farmer 75 cents a pound for all the work he does, and so it should be at least cheaper than it is, because you're not paying for the actual fruit itself, but all the work that goes into delivering it and packaging it, all that work, the farmer gets paid for, and therefore the farmer can make some money during Shemittah that he help him with all the financial issues that he can't be a farmer. Okay, so that's called Otzar Beis Din, and people use that more or less to help farmers during Shemittah and give people produce. People have stuff now, it's cheaper. Okay, so there are 3 kulos that the Chazon Ish has that have to do with Otzar Beis Din, that because of these 3 kulos have made it much more financially worthwhile, much more reasonable to have an Otzar Beis Din. Okay, these 3 kulos stand behind the Otzar Beis Din. Okay, if not for them, it would not be as usable as it is without it. Okay? And 3 kulos like this. The first one we're going to do is called ukmei peiri. Okay? And that means like this. On Shemittah, there are, the Gemara says, there are avos and toldos. Just like on Shabbos, there are avos and toldos. There are 39 avos mochas on Shabbos, and they have toldos. And on Shemittah, there's also avos and toldos. Okay? There are 4 or 6 avos. Well, that's a question. Let's say there are 6 avos. Okay? But there's a very big difference between Shabbos and Shemittah. On Shabbos, a tolda is just as also as an av. It makes no difference if it's an av or a tolda. As far as the isser, it's exactly the same. But on Shemittah, only avos are asur midaraisa. Toldas are not asur midaraisa. So lots of them, like watering the field. Watering the field is only asur midrabanan. It's only a tolda of zeri'ah, of planting, and therefore it's only asur midrabanan. Okay, so what? Asur midrabanan is still asur. So the rule is like this. This is the rule for malachas on Shemittah. There's a difference between whether you're doing ukmei ilana or ivru'i ilana. Ukmei ilana means you're keeping the tree the way it is, you're maintaining the way it is, and you're keeping it from getting damaged. The tree or the field, you're doing something to do that. If that is mutter, that's mutter. If it's in malacha d'Rabbanan, for ukmei ilana you're allowed to do it, just to keep the tree the way it is, that shouldn't get ruined. You're allowed to do malachas d'Rabbanan. The Chacham didn't ask you from doing those, but ivru'i ilana, to improve your tree or to make it have better fruit, or improve your field, those things you're not allowed to do, even if it's a d'Rabbanan. Okay, so that's a din that everybody agrees to. ukmei ilana for Yisurin Darbanan you're allowed to do, uvri ilana for Yisurin Darbanan you're not allowed to do. Okay? So that's all for the tree. So the Chazon Ish said, not only can you do it for the tree, but you could also do it for ukmei peiri also. You could also do it, you can do malachas rabbanan to make you have better fruit. Okay, not the din says ukmei ilana to help the tree. Chazon Ish says, no, you could do it also for ukmei peiri to help the fruit of the tree also. Okay? And Rav Kook said, what are you talking about? He didn't talk to him, but he said, I don't know if he did, I shouldn't take it back. He says, what are you talking about? What do you mean you do things to help the fruit? The fruit are Hashgachah. They're not your fruit. If it's your tree, so you say you're allowed, Chacham said, we'll let you do things to keep your trees. The Ram says, Chacham didn't want that all the trees in the whole Eretz Yisrael should die out every Shemitah. He says, what does it do with fruit? He says, why should you let to do the fruit? The fruit's not yours, and the fruit is not this long-term problem. It's not the trees. If the trees would die every 7 years, there'd be no trees in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, every 7 years they're going to be falling apart. So Chacham said you could do Yisurin Darbanan. He says, but who said you're allowed to do ukmei peiri, which does not say in earlier Practicum. So Chazon Ish back and forth about it, and the Chazon Ish says you are allowed to, and
someone to classify this meaning what you're doing now is not gonna. The tree is fine. The tree will survive.
Mm-hmm.
What you're doing now is to allow the harvest of this year to be good.
Better fruit. To get better fruit from this.
Get fruit or better fruit.
Correct. So that's why you're doing it.
So in other words, the year after, I don't do anything. If I don't do this year, I'll have bad fruit. But next year I'll have good fruit.
Everything will be perfectly fine next year. But I'm doing it just for this year.
I'm doing it just for this year.
Right.
To get decent fruit.
So the reason why this is so important, is because if the farmers couldn't do things to make good fruit, nobody would buy the Otzar Beis Din produce. If the stuff came out looking horrible, it didn't come out looking as good, nobody would pay for it, or they wouldn't pay as much for it. So by the farmer being mako, to do ukmei peiri, to do things that are Yisurin Darbanan, that help the fruit come out better, that makes him have a produce that's worth selling, that somebody was willing to pay for it. I told you apples cost $1 a pound. He's going to sell for 75 cents. But if he brings apples that are only worth 50 cents a pound because they're such garbage, no one's going to pay 75 cents.
In some situations, you might not have a crop. It'll be just terrible, destroyed, whatever.
Yeah, I guess that can happen also. But it's more, okay, that could be. I'm thinking of it just that it'll be more worthwhile, people pay for it. Okay, so this is one kula of Chazon Ish that helps people set up an Otzar Beis Din. Okay, Rav did not hold it. He did not think it was correct. Okay. Now, this is so far for fruit. That's okay. Fruit is what we think of when we think of Otzar Beis Din and we think of things having kedusha shvius. And the reason why I think of fruit is because vegetables and grains, things that have to be planted every year, are asur on Shemitah. The asur midrabanan is svichen. So how can you have Otzar Beis Din for a vegetable? It seems impossible. Because Otzar Beis Din means we start with something that's mutter on Shemitah, an apple, and then we just have a way to get it to town, and the Beis Din takes care of it, etc., as I told you. He says, but in tomatoes, you can't have tomatoes. First, you can't plant tomatoes on Shemitah, and even if they grew by themselves, so they're svichen and asim d'Rabbanan. So Otzar Beis Din seemingly, if you think about it by yourself, you'd say, no, Otzar Beis Din only works for fruit. Can't possibly be for vegetables and grains. Okay? So now we come to the second kula of the Chazon Ish. Okay? It's called zeri'ah mukdemet. Okay? Early planting. What does that mean like this? Vegetables and grains, they're considered to be Shemitah produce if they are harvested during Shemitah. So it means today, it's the middle of Shemitah. Today someone goes out and harvests a tomato. That's a Shemitah tomato. Okay. So the Rambam holds that that's true for Indian for all kinds of dinim, including that it's an issur of svichen. I mean, if I pick a tomato, tomatoes not a very good example. We have a tomato today that was planted before Shemitah, and I pick it today, it's a Shemitah tomato, so it's also a svichen. Okay, but the Rash says, no. He says, for grains, you're right. For grains, that's true. But for, and something called kitnias, that's a classification in Hilchos Zeri'ah. But for yerakos, okay, another kind of food called yerakos, we'll use the word vegetables. No, it's not exactly the translation, but we'll use the word vegetables. Then, as long as they started to grow before Shemitah, they're not asur svichen. Svichen is only asur if it started to grow on Shemitah. If it started to grow before Shemitah, it's not svichen, even though it's peiri shvius. If you pick it today, everyone agrees that it has kedusha shvius. It is shvius produce today. And I guess it's hefker, but it's not svichen. That's what the Rash holds.
What does starting to grow mean? It's sprouting out of the ground?
No, yeah, in the tiniest bit. In the tiniest bit. Okay, so Rav Kook says the din is like the Rambam. So therefore, every vegetables picked during Shemitah are automatically svichen, automatically aser. Okay, and the Chazon Ish says, well, svicha is only isser drabanan. So you could be samech on the Rash over here to say that there's no isser svichen on yerakas that were planted before Shemitah, they started to grow, and they wouldn't harvest it on Shemitah. Okay, and therefore, what farmers do is they do a zeri'ah mukdemet. They plant early. They plant before Shemitah starts, a week before Shemitah, they plant potatoes and tomatoes and other vegetables like that will start to grow right away, and they grow during Shemitah. So now today, they're harvesting vegetables that were planted with a zeri'ah mukdemet. They planted early, they planted right before Rosh Hashanah to grow on Shemitah. Those peiris, those vegetables, have kedusha shvias, because they're shvias produce. They grew today, they're harvested today. But they are not, according to Chazon Ish, they're not considered svichen, and therefore, again, they could be part of an Otzar Beis Din. Okay, so here we managed to get an Otzar Beis Din for vegetables.
Except an Otzar Beis Din, right?
No, it has to work with Otzar Beis Din. Because it doesn't do the farmer any good for it to grow without Otzar Beis Din. What's he going to do with 1,000 tomatoes? So the only value that has it's hefker. The produce is kedusha, it's for sure it's hefker. It only works if he connects to a Otzar Beis Din who will take his things and then pay him for all the work that he's going to do for it. Just to have potatoes doesn't do him any good. I mean, unless he's very hungry. And what's he going to do with it? Just a million potatoes doesn't do him any good. The point is he could therefore connect to an Otzar Beis Din. Okay? That's the second one. Yeah. That helps for yerakas. I told you even the Rash holds that it's not true for kidneys and grains. And tfuah and kidneys, he does not hold of it like for those cases. Okay, so far we had a way to get him peiris, better fruit. Let him do soon the rabbanon with ukmei peiri. You can get yerakas by zeri'ah mukdemet. So for a good half of the year, you could be having yerakas could be growing. Okay,
and you probably you can do ukmei that peiri too.
Yeah, of course you can do it. Yes, put them together. But I still didn't help you. We need the third kulos of the Chazon Ish to help us with tfuah. Okay, to grow grains. Okay, and that's called stay near. Okay, stay near, and that is like this. The Mishnah says, maybe the Yerushalmi says that there are 4 fields. The arbasot is called. There are 4 fields that there's no isser svichen on these fields. Things that grow in these fields have no isser svichen. And the reason is because, I'm not going to tell you all 4 of them, but the reason is because the Isser Svichen is because if you let people take vegetables things that grew by themselves, people will plant and pretend that it grew by itself. So the Chacham said, in these 4 kinds of fields, there's no way anybody would plant in these kind of fields, and therefore you don't have to worry that if you let them eat Svichen, maybe they'll eat the things that maybe they'll plant themselves. Because nobody would be so foolish as to plant in this kind of a field, and therefore there's no chashash, the arbasot, okay? And one of the arbasot is called a stay near, okay? And a stay near means a field that you grew something in this field that makes it unreasonable that any normal farm would want to plant here this year. Nobody would want to plant this year. This is a year it's obvious that you have to leave your field open this year. Agriculturally, it doesn't make any sense to plant in this field this year, and therefore things that grow in this year in a stay near are not usher as svicha. Okay, so the Chazon Ish said what they should do is, and this is in fact what people do, what they should do is they plant wheat in the 6th year, and by planting wheat in the 6th year for whatever it's not smart to then plant wheat again the next year. Okay, that seems how they do with wheat and wheat. Somehow for growing wheat in 1 year, it's not smart to grow it the next year. And the Chazon Ish says, in Cain, we could call this stay near. Because no regular farmer would want to plant wheat in this field again. So what you do is you plant wheat in the 6th year, and then you do a zeri'ah mukdemet of wheat right before Rosh Hashanah, and that wheat is not also a svichen because this is a stay near. Nobody would want to plant wheat in this field. So you're scratching your head, of course. You're saying, no, it's like, wait, I just did it.
No, maybe it's not such a great crowd.
Right. So that's what the Chazon Ish says. But you can understand that people would don't take that. You're calling it a stay near when you're on purpose. You just planted there.
So isn't the word stay near mean a plowed field?
Yeah, but it means plowed because it had already grown something, and you're going to, for this year, just plow it and leave it alone. I think that's how the name comes from. Okay, but the idea of a stay near is it's something that nobody would want to plant in this field this year. So Chazon Ish said we could create our own stay near. We're going to make our own. We're going to plant wheat in the 60 years. You have to really be planned for this. We're going to plant wheat in the 6th year so that we could then do a zeri'ah mukdemet. That's our second cool. We do a zeri'ah mukdemet of wheat right before Rosh Hashanah. It will grow during Shemittah and it will be considered peiri. It'll be peiri, but they won't be svichen. And then we could put them into an Otzar Beis Din and make money. The farmer can make money like that. Okay, so these are three kulos that the Chazon Ish holds. Three kulos that make it more viable for a person to have an Otzar Beis Din and for a farmer to therefore make money. And therefore, as you can imagine, which is our next thing we'll talk about is Heter Mechirah. It avoids. They say, farmer, you could make. I'm going to make up a number. You could make 40% of the income you made in another year. So that many more people are willing to go along with the Hilchos Shmita. Part of what holds people back is the nisayon of the money of it. How am I going to survive? So I say to you, you're going to make 40%. So for some people, that's going to make that's enough to get them over the hill, over the top, and say, okay, good. So then I can keep Shmita this year.
So for guys like this, let's say people that have orchards, right? They're not the ones that we're raising money for?
No, it's a really good question. It's a good question. So if you have, I speak about it. I looked at the financials and things like that, and how they spend it. So the people who give out the money for Keren Shvius give out, they say that they give it out based on the need of the farmer. Meaning if you're a farmer who grows apples and you're going to, through Otzar Beis Din, earn 40%, you get less money than the guy who grows, tomatoes, who grow only 10% of his money. So they try to give it out based on the need, meaning based on how much could you earn, how much could we help you earn through Otzar Beis Din or some other ways that we could find you to make money, that we try to give you to help you. You get less compared to the guy who had other ways, who didn't make as much. You know what I mean? That they try to give out their money intelligently that way. You know what I'm saying? Rather, I don't want to give anybody nothing. The point is they give you less if you have other ways to make. Okay. So that was our fifth thing, and now we're going to move to the Heter Mechirah. Okay.
One suspects maybe Rav Kook was able to afford to be machmer in these things because he utilized Heter Mechirah. Is that it?
So you can ask me which is the horse and which is the car. I don't remember specifically people argued. But the reason to argue is more straightforward. It's like just it seems hard to call it a stay near. So you could talk about which is the horse and which is the cart over here. Are we being machmir about all those things because I have Heter Mechirah, or do I say Heter Mechirah because it's so hopeless to make any money, therefore I'm more pushed to say Heter Mechirah, or the other way around? The Chazon Ish, I don't hold to Heter Mechirah, therefore I want to be extra mekel. Do I want to be extra mekel, and therefore I don't have to hold the Mechirah? Or is it both of them are completely independent? If they came to both decisions independently, it's just sort of. But it's worth knowing is that even though we look at it and we say the Chazon Ish, as we're going to hear in a second, is the machmir about the Heter Mechirah. So we think that he's overall a machmir in Shemitah. It's true about the Heter Mechirah, he's a machmir. About everything else about Shemitah, he's a meko. Okay, he's not a machmir about Shemitah. As I just told you, these three important kulos, he's particularly not a machmir about Shemitah. Okay. Now on to the Heter Mechirah. The Heter Mechirah, as you probably know, the Heter Mechirah is that people in Eretz Yisrael have really a hard time keeping Shemitah. So back in the late 1800s, they came with this idea that they would make a mechira. They would sell the land to goyim. The goyim, the deal was they're not allowed to do isurim d'oraisa. Not everybody follows that, but they're not allowed to do isurim d'oraisa. You're going to do isurim d'rabbanan at that point. Melachas d'rabbanan, which is almost everything. Almost everything is d'rabbanan. And at that time, in the late 1800s, there were people who supported it and people against it, as you well know. And at that time, there was really the financial situation was really desperate. So people were extra mekel. People liked it and didn't like it, and that continues on till this day. That people who like it and don't like the Heter Mechirah. Okay. As you probably also know, Rav Kook was originally started in this position as the Rav of Yafo, eventually became the Rav Rashi. And he took care of the Mechirah and he defended it, wrote about it to defend it. At the same time, even though he did that, he very much encouraged people to be Shemesh Shvius in the regular way, and he talked about how terrible it is that we have to come on to this Heter Mechirah, how terrible it is that we have to do this and not keep Shemitah the way we're supposed to. And on the opposite side was the Chazon Ish, who was strongly against it and said, no, we should keep Shemitah the way it's supposed to be done, and we should not follow Heter Mechirah. Okay, so I'm going to talk in three different parts. The first is that there are the prerequisites. In order to say a Heter Mechirah, in order to have such a structure of a Heter Mechirah, before we talk about whether it's right, what the halachic questions, the second and third point are, the first is, there are three prerequisites. The first is, you have to say, if the land would belong to Goyim, then there would be a Shemitah rules to it. Okay, we talked about that last time, Yivol Nachri. Okay, that in itself was a mach like this. What happens to be in that case, the Chazon Ish was a machmer. That you have to say the most, but it's most assumed that if it grows from a Goy, there's no issue on it. Everything is mutter. Okay, that's the first thing. The second is...
There's no first base.
Right, Chazon Ish says that it's already also correct. The second is, you have to hold the Shemittah Disagreements. Everybody who talks about it says it's only because Shemittah Disagreements do we think about being so makel. And the third is that we have to say that there's a sha'as hadchak. Okay, things are so desperate that we need to be samach on all kinds of shittas that are mekil that we might not have otherwise been samach. Okay, now in this last part, is a sha'as hadchak. So Rav Kook said, he said a bunch of different ways. But
why does that have to be a sha'as hadchak?
Because there's going to be all kinds of kulos, all kinds of things that we're doing that are not so or first choice, or maybe we're being samach on das yachid, and therefore we're saying, since it's a sha'as hadchak, therefore we have to be samach. Rav Kook said, "B'malkam hadchak ha'oyim ha'yishu sharabai." Therefore, I'm willing to be samach on these kind of kulos. Okay?
So what in particular is such a not certain thing that is mutter that has to be sha'as hadchak?
So I'm going to tell you some. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay, I didn't get to the specific issues. I'm going to only talk about some of them. But the point was, he said at that time, if they don't take care of their fields, he says the Goyim will kick them out. The Goyim will take over their lands. The Goyim will kill them. The Goyim, all kinds of horrible. The people will starve, literally starve to death. They had no trade, so we have to just think about it and say the situation in 150 years ago is not the situation today. Today, it's a whole different world. The country is controlled by Yidden. It's not controlled by Goyim. They could buy things from Chutzars if they wanted. They could get food. They're not so worried about all the concerns that they had over there. So you have to. I forgot that we also have Otzar Beis Din and we have greenhouses to grow produce. So you have to just pause and say, they write how we're being makel because there's such a sha'as hadchak. Is that sha'as hadchak? Are we in such a horrible? Our situation worse than it was in the time of the second Beis Mikdash? No, probably a lot better. So it's the whole idea that there's a sha'as hadchak is questionable. It was 150 years ago, and today is not the same world. Related to that was two related things. Were the Beis Levi said. He says, how can you say that you could be samach on a sha'as hadchak when the mitzvah itself, the doichat is built into the mitzvah? This is a mitzvah. This is not a mitzvah like shaking lulav. That you have a sha'as hadchak, you say, okay, you're going to be samach on something. He says, this mitzvah is put yourself in a really difficult situation of having no parasah for the whole year. That's what the mitzvah is. So you say, it's a sha'as hadchak, I have no money. That's what the mitzvah is. The mitzvah is put yourself into that situation. Okay, that was basically. And others say, how can you say it's a sha'as hadchak when the Torah says, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. The Mersham says, I'm taking care of you. So you say, it's a sha'as hadchak. So that was a question we're not talking about. We talked about last week. That was is there a haftacha when it's only Durban? That's a shayla itself. Right. But assuming that it is, assuming that there is a haftacha, so does the Mersham say, I told you, don't worry about it. We talked about that last week. You'll go listen to the recording. Okay, so now let's talk about, there's two main halachic shaylas about that, the technical, so to speak, shaylas about the Heter Mechirah. Okay, and the first is gemiras. That's like this. Gemiras means that if you want to make a kinyan, you want to buy or sell something, then both people have to be interested. They have to really mean it, that they want to buy or sell it. So the question is over here, everybody knows that the buyer and the seller that's a haram. Everybody knows that the people are not trying to sell the land. Everybody knows that we go through this thing every 7 years to make this whole to-do, and we go through all the steps of selling the land, but nobody wants to sell it, nor does anybody want to buy it, okay? It's not anything else, just a formality, okay? So does that, could it be that the fact that it's such a haram, the whole thing is such an obvious shame, that there's no gemiras? If there's no gemiras, then he didn't buy anything, okay? Just a little put in perspective. It makes it sound funny, but people say we need a Heter Mechirah to help the Israeli farmers. Okay, really? We're not helping Israeli farmers. The Israelis, those farmers don't own the land anymore. You just told me they're selling their land. It belongs to some whatever Ukrainian guy who they sold it to. So how are we helping Israeli farmers if they don't even own land anymore? Right? So that tells you I'm selling it so that you should help the farmer, but it's not his anymore. So obviously you don't yourself believe that he sold it. You know what I mean? Anyhow, okay. So there's three reasons to think it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not. There is even though it looks like it's a sham, it's okay. And the first is because the Gemara says when you're talking about an issa d'Rabbanan, haram is mutter b'Rabbanan. When it's only d'Rabbanan, you could do a haram. Okay?
The way I understood the harama to be is that as opposed to Hamza Pesach, if the guy comes as
I'm coming to it. Yes, I'm coming to it. Okay, so the first, yes, I'll say it in 1 second. Let me just finish what I was about to say. One is that it's a you remember from last time, harama b'Rabbanan. Okay, to that they bring it. The Chasam Sofer says he brings all kinds of rayas that it's not such a rule. You can't like every d'Rabbanan we don't allow harama b'Rabbanan. So he says I'm not. So the Chasam Sofer wasn't talking about the Heter Mechirah. He didn't live by the Heter Mechirah, but it's not so clear that really haram is mutter by every d'Rabbanan. Okay, the next thing is what you were about to say, which was it's like Mechirah's chametz. Every year, people say, come on, every year we sell a chametz. Everybody knows that the guy's not going to take the chametz. The whole Chicago sells the chametz to one guy, and he buys all the chametz. And then as soon as Pesach is over, people are rushing back to get their chametz. Okay, so everybody knows that that's a shame. Also, we let it. So if it works today, let it work for here also. Okay, and the argument against that is that the people who sell the chametz Pesach, they're really sincere. Those people, they really don't want to own chametz on Pesach. And if the guy who takes their chametz and gives them the money, it's okay with me. You want to give me my $3 and take my box of Cheerios? Just say it. I don't care. I'll take $3. First of all, I'll go buy another box of Cheerios. But forget about that. I can use the money to buy another one. Is that I really don't want to own chametz and Pesach. That's why we did this. That's why I go to sign for Mechirah's chametz because I don't want to own chametz and Pesach. As opposed to the Heter Mechirah, some of the people are very sincere. They really don't want to be over on Easter and Shemittah. And some people, not. They just know. The rabbi says, sign here. They sign over here. They have no sincerity over there. You know what I mean? And what would happen? The guy's going to give me the money. That would happen. Give me the money. Where am I going to go? Like, what am I going to do with it? You know?
I wouldn't be asking if you give me the money. I really wouldn't.
Right. If you said to the farmer, here's the dollar we want. Here's the $500,000 for your farm. They're like, no, this is my farm. I've been living here since my grandfather. You know, I'm not going anyplace. As opposed to you want my schnapps.
That wasn't the deal. The deal was you can sell it back.
Right. As opposed to you want my schnapps. Just say, take my schnapps. See if I can give me the value of the schnapps. I'll go buy another bottle. We're all over that. Okay. And the third reason to argue on say that there's no gemiras is. I'm sorry.
Is there any time to say I'm selling it to you? I'll try and sell it back to me. So in other words, so if you don't sell it back to me, okay, so I'm taking a chance on the suffering that I'm on. But at least it's sincere. At least it's sincere. I really will sell it if you'll sell it back to me. I don't mean that.
I don't remember. I don't know if that works for these kind of things. I don't remember. I'm sure people talk about it, but I don't remember.
They might not be sincere.
I understand.
Because if you're going to really want it, that's like a t'nai, that's like a very integral to Mechirah. If you really don't, that's not a Mechirah, but I'll try. I'm serious about that. Yeah.
Okay, and the third reason to defend it, to say don't worry about the gemiras problem, is because it's Torah Shebelev. The rule is that if you go through the formalities of something, like in this case you do the kinyan, and you in your mind don't really mean it, or you have some condition in your head, or that something's going on in your head as to controlling this thing, you say Torah Shebelev and Torah doesn't make a difference. The fact that you had that in mind, everyone sees you did the kinyan, you did the sale. A sale is a sale. So that's a reason to say that should be okay. So the question to that is, the rebuttal to that is that there's another rule, and that is, it's always believe overlay kolodam. If everybody knows there's an ansahadi that you don't mean it, then it's not considered dvarim shabalev. It's as if it was spoken. Everybody knows that you're only doing it for this reason. So the question over here is this a dvarim shabalev? Is it I did a kinyan and I'm selling it, or is it an ansahadi? It's obvious that you don't mean that. That's a question of how to judge. I'm going to say to you is that it could be that whether it's a dvarim shabalev or it's an ansahadi that it's not true may depend on the following. Should we look at this mechir of the land? Of the Heter Mechirah as 1,000 people, it's about 5,000 people, each selling their land. Each one of those could very well mean it. It's not an outside, it's not obvious it doesn't mean to sell it. I might want to sell it, you might want to sell it, you might sell it. So if you look at these as 5,000 individual sales, then each person, it's not obvious that he doesn't mean it. But on the other hand, if we look at it as a collective sale, we look at it everybody together, 5,000 farmers, which is almost like 75%, about 50% of the land in Eretz Yisrael is being sold at one time. That's so obvious that doesn't mean it. That's believable call. That's an answer that it doesn't mean. So maybe that the question of how you should view this may depend on should we look at the sale as the rabbi is arranging for 5,000 individuals to sell their sale? That could be okay. Or we say no. The rabbi is selling 5,000 pieces of land, farmers' land at the same time. That's obvious that's a joke. That he doesn't mean like that. Okay, that might depend on which way you look at it. Okay, that's our first halachic issue is, should we say that there's no gemiras? So the way I was told, I might have even seen in writing, the Rabbi Yasha held that was the more serious of the problems about the Heter Mechirah. Okay, now the second one, the second question is, sechanem. And this is the one the Chazon Ish says. He says, I could accept the Heter Mechirah if not for this problem. He holds that this is the ikar problem, that there's a sechanem. Now, what is sechanem? So I'm going to break it down to the following. Sechanem, in order to say that this problem of sechanem makes it that there's no mechira, there are 4 steps, and all 4 have to be true. If any one of those 4 things is not true, then mechira is fine. Sechanem is not a problem. Okay? You'll see what I mean in a second. Okay. Sechanem like this. The first thing is, if the Rabbanut is selling the land for me, they are my shliach. That's the first thing. In order to this problem is going to be breaking down to 4 parts. They have to be my shliach. Second, if someone sells land in Eretz Yisrael, they're over on the issur of sechanem. Sechanem means there's an issur to give chaniyah b'karka, to sell land in Eretz Yisrael to someone who's not Jewish. So the second is that selling land, in fact, is an issur of sechanem. And the third is, if number one is that the Rabbanut is my shliach, and there's an issur to sell land, then by the Rabbanut is now a shliach of avera. The shliach to do the avera of sechanem. And a fourth step is, we have to say that in cases when a person is a shliach of avera, that it's mabatal shlichus. So what happens is, if all those 4 things are true, he's my shliach, and there's an issur of sechanem, and therefore he's a shliach of avera, and the shlichus becomes batal, then he didn't sell my land because he wasn't my shliach. That was number one. He had to be my shliach. If the shliach is batal, he wasn't my shliach. Then the land was never sold, and there was no mechir. Okay. So now, if any one of these 4 steps is not true, then we're okay. Then the mechir works. We have to have all 4.
Mechir work, but it can't. It's still not allowed to be done wholesale.
No. So whether you're allowed to do it, or you're not allowed to do it inherently, that's not my problem. Me, consumer. Meaning, you could be against Heter Mechirah and say you shouldn't be doing it. You're a bad boy to do it. But that's, so to speak, between the farmer and the Rebbeinu Shalom. But as far as my concern, can I walk into the store and buy that tomato, or can I eat that tomato? Is it usher and this and that? That's
okay, fine. My question. It does affect the system.
Yes,
it affects the material.
Yes,
as long as it's usher, it's usher.
So we can scream and say you're a bad boy for doing it. No. I'm saying really, because that's one type of question. But I'm saying it's like throwing rocks at people for driving on Shabbos. You shouldn't be doing it. Okay, that's one thing. But the question that's, so to speak, more lamaisa for us is that does the mechira work? If the mechira works, is therefore am I okay? Am I allowed to eat the produce? You know,
there's also an issue of supporting such a system. If you buy such, you as a consumer buy such foods, you might not want to. Okay, maybe it's al pidin. Technically, it's mukdemes, but okay. If the whole thing is usher, I don't want to, be behind that. Why does this work? Because so the guy can do it and sell himself.
If nobody buys it. Okay. You could say I'll accept that. Okay, so let's go through these 4 things. I'll try to do it quickly. Okay, like this. First thing, the Rabbanut has to be Mashiach. So this seems like the most obvious. It's my land, and you want to sell it to me, you have to be my shliach. Okay? People have tried to get around it. Most of the ways that they tried to get around the shlichus, make him not a shliach, didn't work. But in the past 2 Shemitahs, I don't know what happened this year, but in last Shemitah and the Shemitah beforehand, they came up with this chap of how to avoid shlichus. Okay? And what they did was like this. It turns out that in Eretz Yisrael, nobody owns any land. There's something called the Israeli Land Authority owns the whole Eretz Yisrael. And when you, so to speak, buy a piece of land, you're really buying a 99-year lease or a 49-year lease to that piece of land. And that makes you, so to speak, the owner of the land. But really, it's not yours. It belongs to the Israeli Land Authority. Okay? So, what they did is, they said to the farmers, you know what? Don't make me a shliach to sell your land. What you do is, I want you to give your land back to the Israeli Land Authority. Give it back to the government. You're allowed to do that. There's no isser to do that. It's not an isser. Now, I represent the government. They brought in the guy from the Israeli Land Authority. They said, I, who own all this land, I represent the government, part of the government that owns all that land. I will sell the land to the guy. Okay, so we don't have shliach. The yid, who so quote owns the land, he gives his lease back. The leaseholder, I mean, now the government says, we would like to sell the land. We sell the land to whoever it is. His name's not Jose, but we'll call him Jose. We sell it to this person, and now it's his. And now you, person who used to be the lease owner, you can go. We'll let you use it on Shemitah. Okay, so that's a way to avoid shlichus. If there's no shlichus, the whole thing falls apart. I told you, any one of these pieces falls out, we don't have any isser over here. So we get this great idea. There'll be no shlichus for the Heter Mechirah. Okay, so this sounds like a great idea, and it sounds like a nice idea to avoid shlichus and avoid lo sechanem. And that was the idea. That's why they came up with this thing. But it destroys. David came out of his hole. He's very upset about that. Anyhow. But the thing is, from the gemiras side of it, it made it 1,000 times worse, because
the Israeli government, they're also shluchim of the people.
No, it's whoever it is.
Who's the weather? Right. Who's the weather?
So you say he's also okay. That's a fair question. I'm not sure about that. Let me think about that. But the problem is what I told you before about the gemiras. I said the only way to say that there is a gemiras is a dvarm shabalev, because it's individual farmers are selling it. If each guy's farm is selling it, you could say that's it's only dvarm shabalev. He really means to sell it. He said, but imagine the Israeli government. Could you imagine they went in to Bahrain, and instead of saying to Bahrain, we want to do trade with you, we want to sell you the whole country. Okay? Who would believe such a preposterous idea? I mean, it's obvious that they don't mean that. So that's what we're saying now, is that everyone gave the land back to the government, for the government to turn around in true Zionistic spirit and sell the whole land to some guy. I mean, so that's the gemiras. So you may have helped your sechanem, but your gemiras has been a zillion times worse. It's obvious, a ridiculous thing to think that they're really selling their land. When they're trying shlichus, I told you, okay, we can look at it as selling for individual people, but to sell the whole thing as once is obviously absurd. Okay. So now, number 2. So I said our second step is, in order to sell the land, for this to be an ish, there has to be an isser sechanem. Okay? So there are people who said, no, maybe lo sechanem doesn't apply if you're trying to help Yidden. Lo sechanem is if you're trying to, because it's bad for Eretz Yisrael. We want it to be a Jewish place, but maybe we were trying to help Yidden, some of that's better. Okay, and I told you before, we're not helping Yidden because it belongs to God. But okay, forget about that. Okay, maybe do a short-term sale. Maybe if the person is not open up with the zeri'ah, you're allowed to do it. All kinds of possibilities, but most people didn't get them. Most of the arguments to say that there was no isser sechanem were not so great, not so strong. Okay, so this is pretty straight. Most assume that there is isser sechanem. Okay, they say okay, but even so, now we have to say that the Rabbanu is a shliach d'Ravera. Okay, so that's also important questions, because maybe not a shliach d'Avera, because one of the rules is if the shliach doesn't think that it's an avera, then he's not a shliach d'Avera. Well, maybe he's not a shliach d'Avera. Here, of course, the Rabbanu doesn't think that they're not doing an avera. The Rabbanu are these very important rabbis, and they believe that they're doing the right thing, that they're allowed to do this mechirah. They think they can. They're not. People don't realize what they're doing. They're rabbinic figures who say, yes, you're allowed to do the mechirah. So that's one.
So
That what?
by shrugging.
Right. So here it's more even than that, which is here. First of all, he believes he's allowed to do it, and the other argument is that when we say shliach there doesn't work because it's divya rav, divya talmud. But if you know the person is going to do it anyhow, then Ken Zayin that works. That there's no problem in shliach d'avera. And over here they have a long history of doing it. I know good and well they're going to do it. It's not like I say I think he's not going to follow what I said to him because he's going to divya rav. He's going to listen. I know good and well he's going to do that. Okay, so there's arguments back and forth that maybe
Why can't you have appointments for all the people selling the land? You said it's 500, 5,000? How many?
about 5,000. Yeah.
Have appointments. Put the guy that says the real job, the one with the guy that's buying it, and say, every 15-minute appointments. Come in, Malbus will come in, he'll sell it. Well, obviously.
He could do his kinyanim, sit and do him. Okay, so it's a good question, but I suspect that most of the people are willing to do this, to sign a paper. I have to come into there and say, for an appointment, this and that you're not going to get there. That's it. So you should...
Look at the front people. The guy that's still able to sechanem.
Right, so that won't...
Tell me how to the Mechirah will be good Mechirah.
Okay, so you should know in the infamous time when one big Hechsher relied on the special Mechirah, one of the things that he did was, this is a reputable Hashgachah that relied on a special Mechirah, and part of their special Mechirah was that the Mechirah was on straight without a shlichus. Okay, to avoid those. That's part of what they did was to do a direct mechira and to avoid shlichus. That was one of the ways to do it. So you're saying for 5,000 farmers, I don't know if you could do it, but they try to do it. They said for a specific, you specific farmer, you could do your own little private mechira. So just like you could tell your chametz to your next door neighbor also, right? You could do it. You don't have to go to the rabbi.
You have to know the office and make sure you have to get a gun. You trust him.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do by Zoom, right? We could do the Zoom mechira.
50 minutes appointments, 10 hours a day. 50 a day. How long will it take? It'll take 100 days.
Okay, yeah. And the last thing is that
I need to sell karka than to sell the chametz.
Okay, the last thing is that in order for there to be a problem with sechanem, we have to be the shlichus becomes bottle. Okay, now this question is a Nebi very good. There's a long, the Rishonim have lots of discussion about this. Nebi talks about this, that there's ein shlichus the Dvar means is that the Meshalech, this person who sent it, doesn't get held responsible. He doesn't get an Avera. He doesn't get, the punishment doesn't go back to him, because the guy who did the Avera, but the Shlichus still is fine. He is my Shliach, he did the act for me, but I just don't get any punishment because that, Ein Shliach Avera means that you're not a Shliach altogether. Yehuda says like the Taisus that it Mavatal Shlichus completely, and Chazon Ish thought that was correct. That the din is like that. But, others, fathers in the Sivas, who says not like that, and the Sivas says no, the shlichus is not bottle. The shlichus is still kaim. Just it just means that the guy doesn't get the punishment. It doesn't go back to him. But as far as did the shlichus work, the shlichus works fine. So again, if you hold like that, or again any one of these four pieces, if you have a way to get out of any one of these four pieces, then the issue of sechanem doesn't make a difference for consumers. So Yossi's right, that makes a difference for the sell. You can't sell it anyhow. You're still being over the Isser. But as far as us people on the end consumers, if any one of these four are not true, then there's no problem. Then the things from the Mechir works, so to speak, and then whatever that means.